Hey everyone, welcome to another G News update coming to you from Palm Beach today on a fairly windy but mostly rainy day where there's just been a little bit of a break in the weather. So I thought I'd just come down here and quickly talk to you about some of the issues that are in the news. Well, you all saw this morning a major attack in the Post and in the New Zealand Herald on the previous Labour government, orchestrated by Treasury, and a 3-yearly insight paper that they did that was a bit muted and hesitant, but it was pumped up and sensationalised by a couple of political editors, Thomas Coughlan and, of course, Atlas Luke down at the Post. And it was making out in massive headlines that the Labour government had overspent during COVID and really should have pulled it back, and that the total amount that we spent on wage subsidies and trying to stimulate the economy and getting through COVID wasn't 100% ideal, even though it compared pretty sort of normally against a lot of other countries. Now, it turns out this data here in this graph is taken from the IMF. But if you go to the IMF, you'll find that there is a whole lot more countries than just the ones represented in the graph. But even so, you can see that New Zealand has been positioned alongside America there. And we spent, according to the IMF, less than America did on our COVID response and our spending during the COVID period and the years afterwards. And we also spent roughly similar amounts to the UK and also Australia, who are countries we do compare ourselves with. There's not too much difference between ourselves and the countries like Japan and Canada, but there are also many, many other countries. So it's a bit of a stretch to say that we were an outlier or really out there or well and truly overspending, as has been the case and has been the narrative from Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis. However, they have come out and said that the Treasury paper vindicates everything they've been saying about overspending, and it basically says, well, you know, our debt is a bit more now. But as you know, we borrowed a lot to pay for these big tax cuts for landlords, because the only plan that really we've got is to stimulate the housing market, which is why we continually see Nicola Willis talking about mortgage rates and the OCR coming down and interest rates, because it's only through the housing market and people saying, well, look, my house has now gone up from 1 million to 1.7 million in value, that makes us feel good and then makes us vote for the incumbent government. Well, that story isn't happening, and this morning Bernard Hickey got stuck in and he put some information up on his Morning Dawn Chorus show that he made public, and basically it said that well, you know, this confidence in the housing market hasn't actually gone up far enough to reach the threshold where people are going to invest in buying a whole lot of new houses. So housing remains flat. So the government's plan, which it has always maintained is working because inflation is coming down, isn't working. And not only that, but it hasn't been working now ever since Christopher Luxon guessed that it was the right time to start saying, I'm going for growth because the economic plan is all working and we'll take credit for growth. So essentially New Zealand has been watching Christopher Luxon trying to maintain a lie that economic growth is actually about to happen, and people have got sick of it. During the week, we saw Christopher Luxon come on to News Talk ZB and do a 1.5 hour interview with his advocate and supporter, Kerry Woodham, who basically took some calls from the public, and just about everybody was just fed up. And they were like, when are you going to stop talking and when are you going to start doing something to make things better? Because things aren't getting better, and all the data from the June quarter was worse than it was in the March quarter. So going for growth has been going for no change at all, that nothing's getting better, and the public is seeing through it. And according to Bernard Hickey, who would not lie to you, he's saying, well, there's a huge amount of sentiment in the business community behind the scenes right now, which is saying we're deeply worried. We don't want to embarrass the government because, you know, we're all kind of on the same team. but we are worried because you are not delivering, and when are you going to do something, and it's just getting worse. We also saw all those employment figures come out, and we saw Chris Bishop trying to deny that the way in which all of those Kayanga Ora projects were just cancelled and are just sitting there in places like around Onehunga and One Tree Hill, and nothing's happening, and people have been laid off and gone to Australia. Well, that's not on the government. Said, you know, just because we stalled all those projects and everybody's work dried up, that's not on us. We decided to do that, but, you know, it's not on us. Well, that former tobacco salesman, you know, he'll probably try and convince you that smoking doesn't cause lung cancer, or that if we continued on with smoke-free laws, there'd only be one shop selling cigarettes up north, and there'd be a black market explosion, which would just be, you know, fear-mongering from the tobacco industry. And in fact, we actually did see Chris Bishop do exactly that and get away with a 10 out of 10 rating from The Post, who just can't see anything wrong with Chris Bishop, no matter what he does or says. We also had him denying that the way in which the rejections the Salvation Army have been reporting over at MSD, the number of rejections for applications for emergency housing have exploded by 384%. That number of rejections has nothing to do with the increase in homelessness, as people seek an emergency house but get rejected at over nearly 400% the rate that they used to before Christopher Bishop's government changed the law. So it's stretching everybody's credibility, and New Zealanders are fed up with the lies and fed up with the continuing facing down of all these lies. Today we saw Simeon Brown coming out and trying to argue with Simon Bridges, and Simon Bridges is saying, well, look, you know, National, none of your solutions are short term. Everything that you're doing is long term for Auckland. What are you going to do about now? And Simeon Brown was pretty much like, no, I reject the premise of what Simon Bridges and the rest of the National Party who are conservative are saying. We maintain that we're doing a lot. I mean, look at those visa applications that have made no difference at all. And what else did he say? Oh, there's a range of solutions. So what else is he doing? Well, I guess he's made it harder to get around. He's made it more difficult. We're spending more now on reversing all of those speed limits around Auckland. That's costing us a lot more money. It costs us more to get a licence now than it used to because of National. And of course, well, the price of butter, National haven't helped anyone in Auckland with that. They've punched down on the poor. They've made it really hard for people to survive anymore. You know, about a third, I think, of some of the populations in Auckland are unemployed or underemployed, and there's no stimulation going on in the economy at the moment, thanks to Simeon Brown and his government. And well, what else have they done? Well, they claim they're doing all sorts of things for us, and they're taking credit for things like Reeves Road. I mentioned this morning that Simeon Brown was boasting on his Facebook page this morning that thanks to the getting it done attitude of the National Party, who just get on with things and deliver, Reeves Road is going to actually open soon, and this will connect the back of Howick and Pakuranga to the Southern Motorway a little bit more freely, apparently. But of course, as you know, that whole project had its conception in the Helen Clark government in 2006, was mostly funded by the Auckland regional fuel tax, which was brought about by Labour, that Simeon Brown's government cancelled and moved into us having to use either road user charges, which will sting us all like a wounded bull, or our rates, which are about to land on us all like a big clobbering stick. So the national government are driving up our rates. You know, as you know, they cancelled 3 waters in order to drive up rates for everybody around the country in August. They're also going to be collecting less tax because more people are out of work, but they don't want to borrow anything. Another thing that our friend Bernard Hickey actually had to say this morning on his show was that we've got Ian Rennie, who is the head of Treasury, who is presiding over these kind of reports that vindicate Nicola Willis, who he works for. And Bernard basically told a story how Ian Rennie goes back all the way to sort of the late 80s, where he worked in Treasury as a Treasury official under the Bolger government and was working in the Ruth Richardson space when austerity kicked in and we destroyed the welfare state with the big mother of all budgets in 1991. And way back then, Bernard was saying that Ian Rennie was kind of obsessed with bringing debt down. But when you look at the figures that Nicola Willis is insisting we look at with regard to debt and how debt is a big problem in New Zealand, Bernard doesn't agree. He says, well, those figures don't take into account ACC and they don't take into account superannuation in the Cullen Fund. And as you know, when Grant Robertson was the Minister of Finance, the figures said things like, we're around about 21% or 20% of GDP when it comes to our actual debt, when you include those other factors, when it came to net core crown debt. And basically, I think what we were saying was that was much more comparable with the way the rest of the world operates. But if you're Nicola Willis and you need to make our net core crown debt a big problem and a limiting factor in the financial decisions and direction of travel within our fiscal policies, well, you need the bigger figure. You need it to be around 50 or 40%. At the moment, we're just chasing some arbitrary ratio of GDP to debt. And in the meantime, people's lives are really being affected because we're ideologically fixated to a number and a ratio. And I think you've seen the Labour Party publicly talking already about how we need to move past that old way of ideologically being fixated with a number. The fear and the panic about debt levels versus GDP getting above 50% isn't really based on any real research. We're terribly conservative. The Greens actually came out and told us not long ago that, yes, we could actually have something like 23 simultaneous cyclone Gabriels and we still wouldn't touch that threshold. So, we've overcooked it with Ian Rennie, and we're seeing Atlas Luke and Thomas sensationalising this news and kind of trying to scaremonger everyone and vindicate things that just aren't true about the economy. We've also seen Christopher Luxon posting on his Facebook page today that thank goodness we've got rid of the oil and gas ban, which had nothing to do really with those exorbitant power bills that have gone up since we privatised the gentailers, semi-privatised them. And as you know, most of the big offshore oil exploration and gas exploration companies that were trying to find gas offshore in New Zealand for decades and spending billions started to leave after about 2012, 2013. And we've just inserted this fake reason, the oil and gas ban, is a chilling factor. And if we just keep telling the lie long enough, some people over, listening to News Talk ZB and reading the New Zealand Herald may actually start to believe it. Speaking of those organisations, as you know, Jason Walls, he came straight out of university and went straight into being a business journalist without any experience in business at all. He didn't own a business, he didn't even work in a business, he just went into reporting on it. After a couple of years of doing that, he replaced Barry Soper, which was kind of, beyond, a joke really with Barry. But anyway, he replaced Barry as the political reporter for News Crap ZB. And now he's on the move again, and he's left that place and is going to replace Katie Bradford in time for the 2026 election, where suddenly Jason Walls is going to tell us all about business and the economy, and he's going to be a big fat expert on things that he's got no experience at all with at all. So this is kind of a typical shallow media kind of placement where if you can talk and stand a bit too close and take up personal space and put your microphone in front of somebody, pull off a couple of one-liners, then maybe you are qualified to talk about business and break it all down so that us simpletons can understand it. Thanks very much, Jason. So that's kind of stupid and irrelevant. In other news, I also mentioned how Peter Dunn and the former Attorney General Chris Finlayson have both slammed the government over its unjustifiable changes to the Marine Area Coastal Act, trying to make it impossible for Maori to make a claim that they've actually continuously been fishing in a certain area on the coast. And this is really just very harmful for race relations in New Zealand. And it's a kind of desperate attempt by a government who is doing all sorts of weird things now, like it's setting up an FBI base in New Zealand, an office here, without consulting anyone, without consulting any of its treaty partners. It's trying to exacerbate the law. It's stirring up race hate and trying to get a race vote because they're going down in the polls. We're seeing it just basically doing sort of strange off-the-hoof things. There's a lot of pushback on the way in which NCA just leaves a lot of people excluded. So, you've got a case where, you've got Erica being praised in the press, but you've actually also got at the same time people who just want to act on stage or act in films having to know how to do differential equations and calculus and trigonometry before they can get up on the stage and do a bit of Shakespeare. Or you've got people that really want to just play Beethoven or learn to be part of an orchestra, but they've got to know first how to do some kind of complex Euclidean algebra, because everything's being seen through an economic lens, not a cultural lens. And we've got a government that's not interested in all of those other aspects of what makes our lives good. It doesn't care about the kind of the overall general way in which we have to operate as a society with some diversity. And it allows those people to fall off the cliff and be undervalued because it's all about money, to the superior economic managers who told us that at the beginning of the year that they were going for growth, but they haven't actually delivered growth. And when they do, if they ever do, it won't be because of them that the growth returned. It'll be because of the return to growth internationally after a period of some geopolitical uncertainty and problems in the world. By the way, I mean, this whole excuse that the government didn't see that Trump was going to do some tariffs is ridiculous, because he campaigned on this. And, he was in government in late 2024, so they must have known well in advance that tariffs were coming. But then they claimed that while they're going for growth and not actually getting any growth, that it was suddenly the whole Trump excuse came up, that they were suddenly blindsided and everything was uncertain. But it's just not washing with the public. The public are over it now. I think we've seen enough. I think it's just one-term government, isn't it? It's really just, we've had enough. It's just being lied to all the time. We saw Luxon on News Talk ZB talking to somebody about how he gets it when he doesn't get it. How, I know you're fed up with me saying what I'm about to say to you again and just saying it again anyway. And talking about some far-off projected future that never materializes, when people are saying, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do today? Not sometime in the future, not your foundations, for economic growth, sometime maybe 10 years down the track when the market, the free market, delivers something fictional and ideological, and it's just basically groundless. They don't have a plan. The plan isn't there. And I think everyone's seeing that. Meanwhile, the Labour Party, they're down in the South Island. They're talking to the people that have experienced devastation and all of the climate-related floods. And, we're just sort of seeing Chris Hipkins going around, connecting with people, listening to people, hearing what they're really having to say. We've also got a little bit of chat going on right now about what will Labour do about taxation, and we're obviously going to see that being a big topic for the election. We're hearing the press say that there are hints that there's a capital gains tax coming. Bernard Hickey was saying that he doesn't think it's the right path to just ignore a wealth tax. Bernard Hickey thinks you've got to solve the whole problem of unfairness here. So if Labour does actually do what Vernon Small was saying they're looking like doing, which is just considering an either or but not both scenario when it comes to a capital gains tax or a wealth tax, or you might want to call it a landlord tax versus a capital income tax, then that's going to be a big mistake for Labour, and Labour will possibly lose a lot of votes to the Green Party. I think, it's important to read the room here, but there's actually more talk and policy decisions to go. Labor are talking about that right now, I think. So these kind of things need to be read the right way. You need to see the way that the public are feeling about solving our problems, whether it's really a politically difficult path, and just to kind of figure out good policy, and don't have vague policy, have it all pinned down. Do it properly. Think about who would actually be impacted. Don't have any surprises. So hopefully Labor will get this right, and we will actually see a unified and very aligned left bloc, who should by now be well in front of these losers who have no plan, who are telling us lies all the time, who don't get it, who say they get it, who are trying to use their powers in a stacked treasury to trump up and sensationalise some pretty feeble arguments about debt and overspending and inflation, when even with inflation coming down into zone but now bouncing back up, people's real lives are being affected. And it's like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about the price of butter? You're not going to do anything. Nothing's happening in the supermarket competition space. We're not seeing anything being done. We're just seeing a whole lot of talk. And people are fed up with it, and businesses are fed up with it. And, people are just saving their money at the moment. They're not spending. So all those people that own property and are landlords, they're not actually too badly off. They're just saving their money. They're not upgrading or investing in new houses anymore. And we've got to get beyond that whole house thing anyway, don't we? We've got to invest in better things like our infrastructure, and we need to build more houses. And we heard Barbara Edmonds saying this week that that's exactly what Labor will get on with after Chris Bishop stalled it and then denied he stalled it and wouldn't take any responsibility for everything we saw he did. So that's about all I have to say today. Once again, I want to thank you all for supporting G News, and we'll keep going as long as we can with Vicky out of work and unemployed like so many other people, and we'll try and get ourselves back on an even keel. It's a lovely day down here at Palm Beach. It's been raining a lot this morning, but the sun's out now, and let's hope that this is kind of like emblematic of our future, that the sun will come out, we'll vote in a Labor, Green and TPM government, and we'll get on, build some houses, employ our people, stop punching down on all of our underemployed and our unemployed and our students and our young people. Let's get some workers back into New Zealand. Let's stop looking at education as just some sort of workforce for foreign direct investment. Let's instead think about the musicians and the actors and the neurodiverse and all the other people that go to make up a society and work together, cooperate together. Let's, be fair about Te Tiriti. Let's consult Maori instead of just bypassing them and riding over them like Paul Goldsmith and Christopher Luxon. Shame on these people for treating everybody this way. Shame on them. It's just been disgusting to watch. Come on, New Zealand, vote these guys out. Vote for a Labor, Green and TPM government, and I'll talk to you all again soon.
Welcome to G News, the good news.